About half a year ago, I completely rebuilt my studio, and one of the things that I still needed to talk about is my monitoring setup. And today it's finally that day. Introducing Quasar by LennArt Audio. Now you're probably having a lot of questions right now, like what is Quasar, what led to these, why did I buy them, and why you can't really buy them. Now let's first start with answering what is Quasar, because these aren't your conventional near-field speakers. I mean, look at them. The subwoofer is mounted up here. We've got 10 drivers in total. They're built of steel, like they're really solid, and they have to be built into a wall. And that is because Quasar is really focused at two things. The two most important things you want to have from a monitoring system, if you ask me. Precision, of course, and translation. And translation, of course, being, does your mix or your master translate to the outside world? To your phone speaker, or your car, or your hi-fi setup at home, or whatever. Your mix has to translate to that. And you would think that this all has to do with EQing, or the magnitude of your speakers, like making sure that your speaker can produce every single frequency. Makes sense, right? But well, what I've learned is that there's way more to it. Because the really important thing for both precision and translation is timing. Now, if we look at conventional speakers, we see a lot of, well, what I call time blurring going on. There's resonance, there is reflections, both of course from the room, but also inside of the speaker enclosure. There are phase shifts, and there's also something called inertia. I mean, the driver that of course has to push and pull air also has weight, and getting that to move and also getting that to stop takes a little bit of time. And the development of Quasar was really focused around tackling all of those and even more problems. I mean, it's too much to fit into a video. Every time I talk with the developers about these speakers, I'm learning something new, and it's so much. It's so much, and it goes so far. It's incredible. Now, of course, these are all theories, but how do they perform in practice? Because that's what it's all about. And I would love to demo them to you all, but in order to properly do that, you have to come here, sit down on the sweet spot and listen to them. And logistically, that's a problem. So you have to take my word for it. And from using them for half a year, I can say that this actually works. And I already knew that before I installed them, of course, because I didn't just install these. I listened to a lot of different monitoring setups, and the precision that I could hear on these speakers kept blowing me away. I mean, if I listen to Sandstorm by Darude, I can hear every single vocal edit. I can hear everything that's done right and done wrong. And I find that really important. Now, I know that there are some commenters that are probably already typing away like, yeah, it's cool to have precise speakers, but nobody in the outside world has these type of speakers, so why care, why bother? I want to mix on a car stereo, blah, 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 blah. And my answer to that would be like, okay, so if you're mixing on speakers that are masking, both in time domain and in frequency domain, you aren't hearing something that somebody else could be hearing, because their setup is masking in a different way. And what I want to do in the studio is hear everything, making sure that I've heard more than my clients or the listeners will ever hear. And that is why I want to have such a precise setup. Now, what is kind of weird about the translation of these speakers is that I don't need a secondary monitoring setup anymore. Like, a lot of studios have NS10s or Avantones or whatever to check their mixes on. But what I've learned is that they just tell the truth. So I've never felt the need to check it on Avantones. Of course, when I just had them installed, I was constantly checking my mixes because you're in a new environment, you have to build trust again and that kind of stuff. But I really don't need a secondary monitoring setup. These are just my workhorses, and it's also my trusted entity, my trusted foundation, to say it like that. I found that really interesting, and a small detail that I wanted to share to you all. Now, I've got a little bit of a background story about Quasar, because the company LennArt never really had the goal to develop their own monitoring system. Instead, they were focusing on improving classic monitoring setups. And a fun fact is that the PMC setup on Sound Vision Studio, which is behind this wall, is actually one of those improved classic setups by LennArt.
Yo.
George!
Hi, Wheat.
Hey!
How are you, man?
Hey, about your speakers.
Yes.
What is the difference you've noticed since LennArt improved them?
Do you have a minute? Yeah, okay. No, I was always satisfied about my mixes, but there was always something I thought, there's something. And after LennArt came, then it was pristine, and it was also so good that I decided to start mastering, because the judgment I can do now is really extreme. I love it.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Can you clap your hands? Now, one of the jobs they had to do was create a monitoring solution for a mobile studio. And mobile studios are pretty weird and complicated. You've got size constraints, you've got acoustic constraints, like there's a lot of things that make it complicated. And they came up with the idea to make a custom monitoring setup using all the knowledge they gathered over time from that improvement of those classic speakers. And that worked so well that they decided to make it a product. So, well, here it is. I'm the second one in the world that has these speakers installed. Now, if you want to get a Quasar setup, you can't just go out and buy a set of these speakers. The company LennArt really wants every single setup to perform at its maximum potential. And that is the reason why these speakers come with complete guidance and customization. I mean, simple example. If you don't place your speakers in the correct acoustics or in the correct angle, you're getting a wrong stereo image. And that will make you mix, for instance, vocals in the center way louder than they should be, or way quieter than they should be, depending on where you messed up. And what I've learned during the rebuild of my studio is that this isn't as easy as you might think. So I'm not only happy that these speakers came with guidance, I'm actually advising everybody that wants to improve their monitoring setup to get somebody to help them with these things like placement, acoustics, and also tuning. Now, I can imagine that you are still having a lot of questions about, well, not only this monitoring setup, but about speakers in general. And what I think would be a cool idea is to invite LennArt over here in the studio and either do a video together or do a live stream where you can all ask the questions that you might have. So if you want to see that and maybe already have a question, make sure to drop it in the comments down below. Now, down below is also the description box where I will, of course, link to the website of LennArt, where you can learn way more about these speakers and also the journey that led to them and all that kind of stuff. So, full disclosure, LennArt is a very good friend of mine and I've been following the development of these speakers from day one. I did buy these speakers for my mixing and mastering business, but because they are in my studio and my YouTube channel is about my studio, I'm also talking about it on YouTube. I'm not being sponsored by them or whatever. They're not paying me for this video. And everything that I'm saying is completely my own unbiased opinion. And I really like to keep it that way. So if you like that independence and want to support me, make sure to do that by checking out the affiliate links in the description down below. When you buy something in those shops, after clicking that link, a little bit gets kicked back to me, and that way you're supporting me without it costing you anything extra. Another way to support me is by pledging a bit to my Patreon campaign, which I'm going to link over here. And on Patreon you get early access to videos and studio questions. There's a little bit of a community forming over there as well, so that's really cool. So yeah, check it out, it's all on Patreon over here. The last way to support the whole YouTube platform, which includes me, is by watching more videos. So I'll link one of my videos over here, but YouTube will do its best to recommend other videos that you might like. They will be all around this video. Thanks a lot for watching, keep pushing, and bye bye.